Yeah, I know, I'm super late to the whole fall knitting inspiration train, but that's only because for me, fall starts when the weather forecast looks like this. And before that, it's mentally August. It's not up for debate, it's still summer for me. So I'm only now contemplating what I will be knitting and wearing in the upcoming month, and I'm sort of in between projects right now. So I wanted to make this casual video just talking about a few patterns that I liked, sweater patterns and cardigan patterns specifically. And also I wanted to show you some of the things that I've been wearing in September, just my previous knitting projects that I've been really enjoying, and nothing groundbreaking about this video. We're just gonna chat. And if that sounds like something that might interest you, then continue watching. I'm really glad that you decided to join me today. So last year I've been lurking all over Ravelry for the perfect cable jacket or cardigan pattern, and I wasn't able to find anything. Nothing really piqued my interest, but this year I was blessed by not one but two perfect cable cardigan patterns. The first one is the Siri Cardigan, and it features two of my favorite cable motifs. One is a horseshoe cable and another one is a cable braid. It has both of those running through the front of the cardigan, and also it has a cable on the sleeve. The rest of the body is knit in double moss stitch, so it's not going to be that hard to remember the pattern repeat. And also it calls for 5.5mm needles, which is quite big, so it should be a relatively quick project. The yarn suggestion is a fingering wool plus mohair, silk mohair. I would say whenever you see a fingering wool suggested paired with mohair, you can safely use sock yarn instead of just regular wool, because it will make it a lot more sturdy. In the end, like, the finished object will be much more durable. The other yarn suggestion for this cardigan is Sadness Garn Poppy, which is a yarn I really wanted to try for a long time, but I can't really justify buying it while I have a lot of yarns I have to use up in my stash. Once the time is right, I'm particularly interested in two of the Tweedy colorways they have. And Sadness Garn Poppy is really similar to Kamarose's Snefnug yarn and also to Gepard Garn's Puno yarn, so if you want to use one strand only, you have at least 3 options to choose from. And the second cardigan is the Beatrix Cardigan. It is such a classic RN cardigan look without it being too retro or rustic. It only has small cables right near the button band and one running down the sleeve, and the rest of the pattern is knit. I'm not sure if it's linen stitch or moss stitch, but in any case it adds just enough structure to make it kind of a jacket more than a cardigan. And because of this structure, it's a great outside garment for fall, and then when it gets too cold it can just roll over into a winter cardigan as well. Let's see what are the needle and yarn suggestions. So it's 5mm needles, and it asks for DK weight yarn plus a strand of silk mohair. But I would honestly suggest using Let Lopi for this, assuming that Lopi is your thing. I used it for this sweater right here, and it's a perfect rustic, super warm wool. It's not for everyone, I know that, but if you are a fan of Lopi, it's gonna be perfect for this cardigan and will make it even more of a structured and warm garment. So just a little suggestion. The gauge is perfect for Lopi. Next up, I'm going to embarrass myself and admit that back in January, I started the Waffle loop sweater by Other Loops. I was really excited to start knitting it, but then I forgot about it and shoved it somewhere for 9 months. And then when I was clearing out my stash, a couple of weeks ago, I found something attached to my 4.5mm needles. It took me longer than I would like to admit to realize that this is the Waffle loop sweater I started in January, and now I really want to finish it. So far, I liked every single one of the Other Loops patterns I've seen, and this one is no exception. It looks super modern, even though it has all over cables. The construction and texture combo looks so unique. I really like how the sweater looks in the end, and especially I like the curved nature of the sleeves. So I'm really excited to pick this one up and work on it again. However, I should mention that this is one of those patterns that have a really limited size range. It only has 3 sizes. Boo. It goes up to 130cm bust. Mind you, this is the finished object bust, and it doesn't bother me in terms of my size because I have a small bust, but I would understand if you want to skip this one. So this sweater calls for a DK weight yarn held together with a strand of cashmere or alpaca, but I think it would be fine just to use a silk mohair strand. And also you can use worsted weight yarn on its own for this pattern, but again, the size range is a bit of a shame. Moving on from cables, we have a cardigan that is so unique in its construction. It really captivated me. I've never seen anything like it. It's constructed by adding granny squares to the bottom ribbing on the body, and then you continue knitting in stockinette, and you knit the sleeves in stockinette and join everything into a raglan construction. I rarely knit or recommend bottom-up knitting. I really dislike it, but I think it's worth it here just for the construction and the overall unique look. And it's so interesting that even though it has granny squares as the main motif, it doesn't look kitsch at all. It looks really classic and elegant, and also partial to any cardigans that have knitted buttons. So maybe give this one a go. This is knit in 5mm needles with 1 strand of fingering wool. You can use sock yarn, and 1 strand of silk mohair. So a really classic combination. Next up, we have a lace design, and this is a pattern I actually finished recently, really recently, like last week. It's barely blocked, and this is the Peacock Cardigan. I really enjoyed knitting it. It's the second similar construction I've knit from this designer. She has different lace motifs. It's honestly so engaging to knit because first you're working on this lace motif on the yoke, and then once you're done with it, it's just mindless stockinette, so it's perfect. And also there's a cardigan version, a sweater version, and a t-shirt version. I've made a t-shirt version of her palmy tee, which I really adore. And my only suggestion if you're knitting a cardigan version is maybe not knitting it in a dark yarn, because I realized I wear a lot of dark tops and just long sleeve tops underneath my cardigans, so when I put this one on, the lace pattern just washes out. So unless you're planning to wear your cardigan over white t-shirts, maybe don't repeat my mistake and knit it in a lighter yarn. But anyway, it's knit in 4mm needles, and it calls for Sadness Garden Sunday yarn plus a silk mohair strand. But this is a pattern where you can get away with using 1 strand if you're like me and you're sick of having to pair yarn with silk mohair for everything. I knit mine in Gepard Garn Pure Lana, which is half wool, half alpaca yarn, and didn't have to pair it with anything, so it was perfect. So how long did we manage to go without mentioning a petite knit pattern? I think we did pretty good. Next up is the Eva Cardigan, and I'm a bit biased towards it because it features my favorite 2x2 rib, which I think elevates a lot of projects, especially if it's just a simple stockinette design. I like it a lot more than regular 1x1 rib. I don't care, I will always have a soft spot for petite knit patterns. I think her explanations in the patterns are just the best out there. Sue me. I love her patterns, no matter how popular or overexposed they are. I always find something useful in her instructions. I think there is still a place for them in every knitter's wardrobe or knitting journey, just because even though the actual designs are nothing groundbreaking, the instructions are really good. Following it and just absorbing the information makes you a better knitter. Because for me, it's important for the pattern to actually hold your hand. Even if I'm not planning to follow the instructions thoroughly, I want the pattern to be able to guide me through the difficult spots or some constructions that are new to me. But yeah, let's move on from petite knit. We have 2 more patterns to go. So first one is the Salkantay Sweater, which is a pattern by Twin Knits. I've been seeing their designs all over my recommended and my explore page for years now, and their Salkantay Sweater is knit top down with a dropped shoulder construction, and it features colorwork design starting from the bust right until the ribbing at the hem, and it has a monochrome version and also a version with 2 contrasting colors, and I honestly can't decide which one I like more because they both look really beautiful. The suggested needle size is 4mm needles, and the yarn combo is fingering weight plus silk mohair. So last but not least, we have another really lovely monochrome design. This is a striped sweater called the Stornoway Sweater. This design alternates a stockinette stripe with a textured stripe in a different color. It has a dropped shoulder fit, and honestly, the fit overall is so classic. I think it's going to become a wardrobe staple, even though it's a striped sweater. It looks so neutral and so kind of effortlessly chic. And it's knit in 5mm needles, and the yarn suggestion is super unique. Pure Gint by Sadness Garn and a strand of silk mohair. Who would have thought? But I'm being mean. Most of the sweaters are made that way, so nothing to really be mad about. But looking at the gauge, I would say this is another sweater that will look really nice in Lopi, in Let Lopi specifically, and I think it'll add more structure and more kind of boxiness to it. So if that's something you're interested in, maybe give it a go in Lopi. And yes, the fabric does feel really nice when you use silk mohair paired with the yarn you're using, but there's no rule. You can use any yarn you want. You can skip silk mohair, you can use acrylic, do whatever makes you happy, and whatever suits your budget, which is equally as important. So I had a short break and now I'm ready to show you all of my favorite makes that I've been wearing throughout September. And we'll start with a garment that I consider to be, first of all, my most worn, and second of all, my favorite thing I've ever made, just period. This sweater is up there in the list as well, but I only finished it a couple of weeks ago and I haven't had the chance to wear it, which is nice because it means that the weather has been lovely. I'm sure I will have plenty of opportunities to wear it when the weather turns to shit, officially, but that's beside the point. I really love my puff tee. I talked about it before many times. It's a pattern by Knitting for Olive and it's such a neutral piece that goes with everything. And I mean everything. No matter what outfit I choose, if I wear this blouse or t-shirt, whatever you want to call it, it just pairs great. And I can't recommend this pattern enough. I also have a soft spot for this blouse specifically. I have another puff tee I made some time ago, but this is a t-shirt I wore a lot the last time I visited my dad, who is in the army, so I don't get to see him a lot. Most of the time we don't even get to talk on the phone. And he said, first of all, that it really suited me, which was really nice of him. And also he was so fascinated by the construction. He didn't understand how this sleeve construction worked and how this t-shirt has no seams anywhere. I remember we had a really nice chat about knitting and I kind of talked him through how I made this t-shirt. So now every time I wear it, I think about him even more often than I do already. So this blouse t-shirt has a lot of really warm memories attached to it. And the next garment we have is something I finished in May, I think. And this is my weekend slipover by Petite Knit, and I made some modifications to this pattern. I did not do any armhole ribbing. I just finished it in single crochet edge instead. And I also don't remember if the pattern has a slit in the ribbing at the hem, but I made mine with a slit, kind of similar to the holiday slipover, which is also a Petite Knit pattern. I also made it in twisted rib as opposed to 1x1 rib. And I knit this using vintage yarn, which I cannot find any more of, which is a shame, but the closest dupe I was able to find is a yarn by Rowan. I don't remember the name, but I will put the name and the colorway on the screen. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention what I used for the puff tee. So I used 2 strands of silk mohair, which is the original suggestion in the pattern. It only calls for 2 strands of silk mohair, but I also added a strand of sock yarn, so it was 3 strands held together, 1 of sock yarn, 1 of white silk mohair, and 1 of beige silk mohair, just because I needed to use up what I had in my stash, and gives it sort of this marled look in the end, which I love. And the last thing I wanted to show you today is my accidental twin set combo. I made this Eva Cardigan last year, and surprisingly, I really hated it when I made it because this is a hand-dyed yarn and I forgot to alternate skeins and accidentally used a really dark small skein of yarn right here in the middle of the body. So it had this dark stripe right where you can see it, and I was really bummed out when I saw it after blocking because it was all I could see. But I've been wearing it so much with everything and it's been such a wardrobe staple for me, I rarely even notice it anymore. And I think nobody else does too, so it's not that big of a deal. I made it in a strand of superwash wool yarn with a strand of alpaca mohair and nylon, kind of similar to silk mohair, but a more budget option. And I had a lot of the fingering weight yarn left over, but none of the mohair. I wanted to make a top out of it, so I made this white top, which is a pattern by Knitting for Olive, and I really liked and enjoyed it a lot in the summer. And I just love how these look together. Even though this one is a slightly different color because it doesn't have any mohair, they still look spot on, like it's been a set from the get-go. So I'm really glad I was able to use up this yarn in an efficient way. I can't recommend both patterns enough. Eva Cardigan is knit in a really simple textured design that gives you sort of a basket weave texture, but it's a lot easier than knitting entrelac. You can give it a go if you want. I had a fun time knitting this pattern. White top though is a bit trickier because it has really involved increases at the bust, and also it's a fingering weight rib throughout, so it took me more time than I would like to admit, but the finished object is really worth it. Especially since I can just wear it throughout fall by putting my Eva Cardigan on top and having it look like a set. So this was really fun, and thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and consider subscribing. You can also watch my previous podcast episodes and also follow me on Instagram if you feel like it. I'm trying to be more consistent in posting on Instagram, with relative success, but also you can drop me a message there. I also created a Ravelry bundle with all of the patterns I mentioned in this video, so you can check it out in the description below. And please let me know in the comments what are you working on right now and what are your plans for fall knitting and your favorite patterns or designers, anything. I would love to chat. I hope you're having a wonderful day, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.